Over on the Residents of Evil channel here on YouTube, they've published an ambitious fan film telling the story of the Keeper's Diary from Resident Evil 1, starring none other than the live-action actor for Chris Redfield from the 1996 original game. But instead of following the main characters of Resident Evil, the Keeper's Diary tells the story of the man who wrote the famous diary entries that your character finds in the West Side first floor bedroom. It's short, it's low budget, it's charming, it's pretty well made for the type of project it is, and will likely only be truly engaging for old school fans like myself, who have a deep nostalgic connection to the original games. It's cool to see this aspect of Resident Evil lore get explored, and I'll admit half my enjoyment came from thinking, oh my god, that's Chris, I can't believe I'm looking at Chris again. And instead of reviewing this fan film, critiquing it or whatever, I thought it would be interesting to ask the question, why does this film even exist? I mean, people tell stories in the Resident Evil world all the time, but it's not every day you see someone take a single document, one found in a completely optional room, a document that has nothing to do with the main characters, and turn it into a movie starring the real Chris Redfield. What is it about the original Keeper's Diary that captivated players in the 1990s so much that they would make a movie about it 30 years later? The easy answer is the stuff that's immediately obvious. You're attacked by a monster in the closet right before reading it, so it's a jump scare. And it has the iconic ending words, "Itchy Tasty," which can be found on hundreds of t-shirts and have gone on to be seen in many places, most recently smeared on the window in Welcome to Raccoon City, and in the song Dear Diary by Bring Me the Horizon, which has a lot of lyrics similar to the Keeper's Diary, references to dogs, and it says tasty itchy near the end. And yeah, those are the standout things about the Keeper's Diary, but it's only 10 pages long, those pages only being 20 to 40 words each, at times fewer. The character in the diary is never brought up again, he's not important to the central plot, so why is it so special that it deserves a movie? The reason this diary is so memorable and so powerful is because of something I've tried to talk about a few times already on this channel, and that's note frequency in horror games. I've become frustrated with how horror games have been making their stories and worlds more and more detailed and complex, but haven't found ways to tell those stories without dumping all the information on us in text form. There's nothing wrong with reading notes for story, but there's a big difference between the way old horror games used to do it and the way new ones do. Play a modern horror game like Amnesia, Tormented Souls, Outlast, Crow Country, Signalis, and you are bombarded with documents, sometimes very long. Signalis, a game with a great story, has you finding 3 documents at a time in a single room. Trying to read all this and piecing everything together can take up a lot of playtime, when the old way of doing things was to let the player immerse themselves in the experience, and reward them occasionally with a piece of story that expanded their understanding of the situation. And by that point, they're actually hungry for the knowledge. That's where the Keeper's Diary comes in. Resident Evil 1 is a game with very few notes to read. Some of these are just passcodes, or a photo or tutorial document, leaving like 10 total notes to read that talk about what's going on in the area around the mansion, short letters from other researchers, and of course info on the secret Umbrella experiments happening here. Most of the notes are found after you've already escaped the mansion and spent a lot of time in the game. The story is drip-fed to you over several hours as you lose yourself in the haunting atmosphere and tense gameplay. The impact and staying power of the Keeper's Diary comes from the fact that it's very likely to be the first story document the player comes across after a good half hour or hour plus of wandering around this mysterious mansion with no idea what's even happening. We didn't know the world of Resident Evil back then. We didn't know what the T-Virus was yet. We didn't know the Umbrella Corporation. All we knew was what the game had told us. Murders in the woods, special police force disappeared at the mansion, and our team is going in. The Keeper's Diary is the first thing that gives some detail as to what's happening, and it tells it in such an engaging way. Instead of it being a news article or something dry, it uses the perspective of a man involved in the experiments as he's slowly turning into a zombie. It mentions scientists doing research on monsters, feeding them live animals. It mentions an accident in the basement lab, which tells us that this place must be more than it seems. And we start to read about this man's deteriorating condition, forming blisters and his skin coming off. He is not allowed to call his wife. Researchers are being shot for trying to leave. We feel his fear and his confusion, and we see this poor man's humanity disappearing page by page until he can barely think beyond his most basic instincts. It's brilliant. It was a compelling set of pages that quickly and clearly communicated so much about the world of Resident Evil, leaving us with some very vivid images in our mind of what must have happened here. And during this fan film of The Keeper's Diary, I kept imagining if the original Resident Evil were made by horror developers now, this rare and important diary entry would just be one in 50 or 60 documents found scattered across the maps. There would be a document in every room, and this diary would not have had the impact that it has by being the lone document found after an hour of clueless exploration. I've gone into these concepts more in a dedicated video called Horror Games Suck at Telling Stories, which you can check out if you like. I'm pretty happy with that video. And yeah, watching The Keeper's Diary made me think of all that stuff again, and I think the fact that this diary entry was so impactful that it led to a fan film of this level, to me, is absolute proof that limited note reading is the best way to go when telling your stories. Resident Evil is a series that people care deeply about, and the love held for the classic titles inspires a lot of passionate work, celebration, and community. The fact that someone could dedicate a few years of their life to making a short film based on a diary entry in a game from 1996 shows you how much people absolutely love this game. And I hope the classic fans never stop spreading the good news of the original games to new generations of fans. Congratulations to everyone involved in The Keeper's Diary. I hope there's more to come.